Oh, I walk in death's dark vale, yet will I fear not live, for thou art with me, and thy rod, for thou art with me, and thy rod and staff me comfort still. My table thou hast furnished in presence of my foes. My head thou dost with oil anoint, my head thou dost with oil anoint, and my cup overflows. Goodness and mercy all my life shall surely follow me, and in God's house forevermore, and in God's house forevermore, my dwelling place shall be.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this day that you have given us. We thank you that every place we go, first of all, you're there. Secondly, Father, you always find us. And sometimes that's disturbing. But more often, Father, it's comforting. Because we know that whatever we face, whatever comes into our life this day, it's not going to catch you off guard. And you will always be able to provide us with the things that we need, with the character you call us to display, and with your assurance that you will be with us there. So, Father, this morning, help us as we look at this psalm that we know so well, to remember all that, because it serves as a promise and as a reminder. Let's give you praise, for it's in Jesus' name we ask it. Amen. There are a couple of things in life that serve as foundation. In other words, those are the things that everything that we know and believe stand on. And they don't stand on anything else. It is this thing that we look at, that we think about, that guides us through the lives that we live, that gives us assurance, that gives us confidence, that lets us know that you are there with us. One of those things that we're going to talk about for just a little bit this morning is the idea of a shepherd. I never knew about shepherds. I knew about ranchers. I knew about cattle. I didn't learn about shepherds until I moved out west, because that was the first time I ever really saw sheep. Okay? And as I talked to the people involved with it, they were telling me some things. They said, this is hard work, first of all, because sheep are really dumb. They don't know what to do in their life. In fact, they can be standing next to water and they will die of thirst. Because you have to stop the water, because if it's running, they'll look at it all day and not drink a thing. They don't know exactly where they're supposed to do, so the shepherd has to move them from a place where there is no grass to a place where there actually is food. And sometimes when we think about people we know, we see them behaving in ways that we know are destructive. And then we talk to them about it, and they know it's destructive. They just don't seem to know how to fix it. They just seem to be stuck where they are. And that's maybe where this psalm talks to us about not us, but it talks about him. Because it doesn't really start with us. In fact, the Bible is structured that way. It never begins with us. It always begins with him. In the beginning, in Genesis, it does not start with us. It begins with him. In all four Gospels, it doesn't start with us. It begins with him. And so, this is the structure of our faith. As we look at this morning, and we look at some other passages that impinge on this, we're going to see some things that are meaningful for us because we need a shepherd. By the way, we don't just need any shepherd. Because some shepherds, Jesus says, are hired. And they have an investment in getting a check. Not so much in the sheep. The owner has an investment in the sheep. And the unique thing there is that sheep are raised not so that we can eat them. They are raised so that year after year after year, they are sheared for wool. So you don't want them to make it just through one season. You're taking care of them for season after season after season. So the shepherd spoken about in this passage is a little bit different. Because it says, it is the Lord who is my shepherd. So as David wrote this, he was not thinking about just anybody. He was thinking about this shepherd because he was one. When we first see him in the Bible, he is taking care of sheep. And so they go to get him because Samuel is trying to find out who the next king is going to be. And he walks up and says, well, it's not this one. All the sons. He goes through them one by one by one. He's not here. And if you read the text carefully, you get the idea that everybody's irritated. Because they go, is there another son? And they said, well, yeah. Well, where is he? He's taking care of sheep because that's where he's supposed to be. He said, go get him. And well, there's other people here bigger and stronger than David. Of course, Samuel wasn't impressed. He says, go get him and bring him back. The Lord is my shepherd. I have what I need. He lets me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He renews my life. He leads me along the right paths for his name's sake. So here's the picture. This shepherd. This shepherd that is, and this sounds so pedestrian, trustworthy. In other words, if he tells you he's going to do something, he just simply does it. But then, let me ask you a question. Do you want a Lord who is undependable, who may or may not show up? No, this shepherd. Because the character of the shepherd matters. It's not just any job we called him to do. It's this job. Feeding, caring, chasing. All the time, everywhere. And they get lost, you go get them. And maybe there's a picture there that we're going to talk about later that we need to back up. And the other thing is, the sheep know. They know they're helpless. Because when they're stuck, they will not just stand there and do nothing. They will bleed for the shepherd. We are in trouble. Please come get us. Please come take care of us. Let us know that you're actually interested in what's going on because they need the help. And sometimes the shepherd goes before them because he's trying to lead them somewhere. Sometimes the shepherd goes behind them because he's guarding them. He knows where they need to go and he wants to make sure that they all get there. Sometimes he has other people to help him, but it's always his responsibility to get them from one place to another. The whole picture here Even when I go through the darkest valley, I fear no danger, for you are with me. Have you ever been in a dark valley where you didn't know exactly what was going on and you weren't sure anybody was caring for you? Where did you want them on? You wanted somebody to care for you. You wanted somebody to come get you. You wanted to know that somehow this person, this shepherd, that you may or may not know, is actually going to come find you. As children, we know that because when we lost, we don't know what to do, but someone comes and says, I will take care of you. And normally, they do. They take you to a place where you can stay until your parents remember that you're lost. And then they come and they find you. And you know you're going to be in trouble, but the first thing you see is the joy on their face because you're found, because you're safe, and because they can take you home. So the sheep knows. And that picture of a searching shepherd has a bigger meaning when we think about the word, this theology. We talk about something called incarnation, which is a really big word, which is just a description of he became flesh, which is just a bigger thing that means he came to get us. He was not content with just hoping we got into the right place, but just watching us, because a shepherd is never a spectator. It's an active thing that we're involved with, and he's involved with all the time. It's about leading us. It's about caring for us. It's about making sure that we are taken care of. I fear no danger, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. There is someone there that lets us know that we are safe. And there are times in every one of our lives when we remember not being safe. When life was fraught with danger, when there were things that we couldn't control. So it becomes this. And as we look through this a little bit further, it comes to us with another idea too that we need to hear, because it's about this idea not only of protection, but assurance. Because if the shepherd is not dependable, if he's not trustworthy, let me ask you, what assurance do you have, really? When we were in Canada one time when I was in the Coast Guard, and we got off the ship and we went down there, and you know what the first thing we were concerned about? Can we get back on? Or if we get in trouble here, will they come get us? Because it's a foreign country. They're under no obligation to bring you back. If you're in trouble, they have an obligation to keep you. So there is this shepherd that tells us only goodness and faithful love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord as long as I live. And the thing we always ask, because of who we are, is simply, does he really mean? The thing about this passage in John chapter 10 and Matthew chapter 11, 28 and 29, is this idea of conditional promises made by the shepherd who looks after us. Because there's nothing there about our behavior. It's all about his behavior. It's all about his character. What is it that he brings to us? I am the good shepherd, John chapter 10, verse 11. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand, since he is not the shepherd and doesn't own the sheep, leaves them and runs away when he sees the wolf coming. The wolf snatches and scatters them. This happens because he is a hired hand. He doesn't care about the sheep. When they brought David up to Saul, and they asked him, just exactly what is your qualification for this particular position? You remember the story, he said, don't you? Well, when I'm a shepherd and the bear or the lion comes, I go get the bear or the lion. And I'm determined to bring the sheep back. When he walked out to face Goliath, he looked at Goliath and says, hey, I've looked at a bear or a lion. You don't impress me. No matter how well armed you are, you're going down. And everybody's going to see that. And we know that story, how I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays his life down for the sheep. So what does that look like? Because the sheep are this. They're worn out. They're exhausted. That picture we have of the armies of Israel, they've been hearing all this stuff from Goliath and the Philistines, and they were exhausted. Maybe they were physically exhausted from all the stuff. Maybe they were emotionally exhausted because nothing is happening here. We're afraid we're going to die. Maybe they were spiritually exhausted because they really didn't think that their God was going to come answer them. After all, what good is God who doesn't do anything? They had all the stories about what God did in the past, but they were saying, yeah, but what are you doing for me now? What have you done for me this week? You're worn out. Jesus talks about that. Matthew chapter 11. Talks about how sometimes we're just weary and beat up. And we've seen people that are like that. They may be well dressed, they may be well taken care of, but it's the look on their face and it's the way they stand. They're worn out because they look into a future and they don't see anything of hope in anything that's going on there. And it doesn't take us much in the world we live in to see that. People who don't have hope as anything but a theoretical concept. They know it's out there somewhere, but they don't see it for themselves. So no matter what they have, no matter what's there, the one thing they need is the one thing they do not have. And that's any kind of rest. They can go home and get in bed, but they don't sleep well. They toss and turn. They eat well, but they don't ever feel like they've got enough. And when we walk up to them, there's a part of us that said, well, why don't you just get a life? They don't have a life that's worth living, and they don't see one coming. And sometimes that's Christians. Because there's something about us that has forgotten not just a shepherd, but the good shepherd. Because the description of the good shepherd, since words matter, because that's the only way we have to describe it, the words we use. Let me tell you what he's not. He's not nice. Because nice carries this idea with it something else. I don't want to offend you or make your life hard. I want to stay your friend. I want us to get through all of this. I was talking to someone one time. It may have been because I've thought this from time to time. And in speaking to them, I finally figured it out. They were telling me, I don't want to offend my kids. I don't want to get in their face. I don't want to make them not like me. And I thought about it for a second. I said, your kids don't need another friend. They have all the friends they can possibly need. Most of you are on Facebook. You all have people on Facebook that are your friends. Let me ask you, really? If you were in trouble, would they drive 3 or 4 states to come see you? A friend is not nice. A friend is someone who comes to us and tells us what we really need to hear, that confronts us. And when we look at Jesus Christ, that is exactly what we see. He would go to people and help them. But when that was done, he challenged them to be better. That's what we find in the gospel. This God who is not nice in that sense, but he is good because he brings us what we absolutely need. And sometimes we'll say, I don't really want that. I don't want to do discipline in my life. I don't want to have to make decisions. I don't want to have to trust you. I want you to fix it. And what the shepherd does is it makes us part of the solution. He walks with us through those things that are going so that we know about him. The only reason I can walk through the darkest valley is because he's with me. And he's not going to take me down any path I want to go. He's going to take me down the path that leads me to safety, that leads me to provision. He's going to take care of me. And sometimes it doesn't feel nice. But at some point we recognize it feels necessary. That's the place we need to go. So he becomes this idea, good. And good in the sense of absolute. Not kind of good, not good most of the time. but good all the time. Someone who always does for us what is right, what is true. I am the good shepherd. I lay down my life for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. I lay down my life for the sheep. There are a couple of things that we understand that good and evil, they're not the same. They're not even in the same category. And it doesn't matter how much you dress up evil and make it look better. It still is bad beyond our description. And when we come to it, it's that word. It looks good, but it's not. Everything about this is always bad. So, the shepherd who is looking for us, maybe that's the first thing. He has come to get us. Because there is no shepherd worth having that doesn't do that. In the Middle East, all the ground pretty much looks like what you're looking at. It's just high desert. Unless you're really high up, close to the coast, or high up in the mountains, it's this kind of rocky, sandy place that you're walking across. And when you lose a sheep, you can't call 911. You have to go get him yourself. And as you call out his name, and by the way, they're all named. And he knows all of them. So he's not calling out, hey, sheep. He's calling out whatever the name is. Because he's looking for them. And the sheep is listening for that. This one voice that he knows indicates safety and security and provision. So we're listening for that voice that has come to get us. The voice that talks to us about safety. He talks to us about him being trustworthy. And I know I said this is a pedestrian word. It really is. But let me ask you a question. If you need somebody trustworthy, is it pedestrian? Or is the one meaningful thing you need to hear? The one person that you can trust to come to you and bring you exactly what you need, not someone who is nice, but someone who comes to us in the middle of all our bad decisions and tells us, I'm going to stay with you. I know that you probably from time to time won't like it. I know from time to time it'll really disturb you. I like reading the letters of Paul because he always begins by telling you how much he loves them. And in the middle of that, he tells them, you're really messed up. But when he gets to the end, he tells them, I really love you. And they got that. The people that read those letters, that heard those letters, and that met him later, when he had to leave, they did not want him to go. When he came, they weren't really sure they wanted him to be there. But when he was done, they knew there was one guy, this one man, that would do whatever they needed. He's also sacrificial. He comes, in the text we're looking at, he comes and he's willing to pay any price to get there. For you see, the shepherd simply doesn't care. He doesn't care about the weather. He doesn't care about the danger. He doesn't care about how far he has to go. He doesn't care anything at all except the welfare of that sheep. And when Jesus comes to find us, it doesn't matter where we're hidden. It doesn't matter who has hidden us. It doesn't matter how far he has to go, because I still think the distance from heaven to earth is pretty broad. He said, I'm coming. And if we are the ones that have been involved in self-inflicted pain, that may not be a good thought. But then again, the longer the self-inflicted pain goes off, the more we know that we need the shepherd. I'm coming to look for you. Even when I go through the darkest valley, I fear no danger, for you are with me, your rod and your staff. They comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You bless me. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup overflows. I begin to realize, since you are looking for me, and when you find me, everything I need, you will give me. I don't have to worry. I don't have to stress about this, because you'll sacrifice for me. And people got that about Jesus. They saw his life as a sacrifice. They saw his death as a sacrifice. In fact, when they're describing him in the book of Acts, you know what they say? He went about healing all who were oppressed by the devil. That means if you went to him, you would get help. He would be there for you. He would sacrifice. Only goodness and faithful love will pursue me all the days of my life. Over in John chapter 10, he talks about that. I'm going to come get you. I've received this power from my Father. And since I've received it from him, there is nothing in the universe that can stand between me and you. It doesn't matter how impressive they are. It doesn't matter how fearful they are. It doesn't matter how much power. It doesn't matter where they reside. They don't have the power to keep me from you. I knew a man one time who had been a prisoner in World War II. Spent 2 years in a German prison camp. And he didn't talk about it hardly at all. So there were a couple of us one time that sat down with him, and they said, can you please tell us what it was like? And he smiled for a while. He said, no, I can't, because you have no context in which to understand it. But I'll tell you this. I spent 2 years in a prison camp, and I never felt alone. And I was able to offer comfort to others there, not because of who I was, but because of who he was. Because I had this assurance in him there were others that drew strength from what I said. The shepherd that sacrifices, that comes to get us. The shepherd that gave us a message. And it didn't matter whether you were a Jew or a Gentile, you got the message. And it doesn't matter now, wherever you are in the world, whether you're in Jerusalem or in Gaza or in Lebanon or in Ukraine or Russia, that same voice, that same shepherd. And you know what? We might not even be looking for him. But he knows we're in need, so he just comes. He's there for us. He's the leader of the flock. He sacrifices to the flock. In fact, in John chapter 10, he says something like this. I have other sheep that are not from this pen. I must bring them back also, and they will listen to my voice. Then there will be one flock and one shepherd. You know what he talks about? He talks about sheep that he's not even around yet, but he says, I'm going to go get them too, because they're lost. That means that whenever we talk about Jesus, we're not talking about somebody who may or may not show up. You see, he comes and he gives us what we need. Because it says, he is not kind of good. He's not generally good. He's not good when it suits him. And he's not good when he's not just when it's hard. He says, I'm always good. I always bring good with me. It doesn't matter whether it's hard or not, I'm going to do it. We all know people that are kind of good, that are generally good, who most of the time will do what they say, who most of the time will meet the needs of others. It's not enough. I don't mean to be dismissive, it's just the truth. When we call on someone to help us, we don't need somebody who may or may not show up. When I get on the phone or I send them an email, I need them to come just like we do. So Jesus, in describing this in Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 and 29, and I'm not going to preach on this, I'm going to read it, that's all. Come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, because I am lowly and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy. By the way, we all wear a yoke of some kind. Do you want one that's painful, or do you want one that's easy? My yoke is easy, and my burden is light. The character of the shepherd is the foundation of the life we live, because he is the good shepherd. He's good all the time. He brings us good all the time. He offers us good all the time. He's the one that we can always depend on all the time. From birth to death, He is the one person that is always there all the time. So let me ask you, is that the shepherd you want? The shepherd that's always there, the shepherd you can always depend on? If it is, you need to come this morning as we stand and as we sing.
Hark the gentle voice of Jesus calleth tenderly upon your ear. Sweet His cry of love and pity calleth, turn and listen, stay and hear. Ye that labor and are heavy laden, lean upon your dear Lord's breast. Ye that labor and are heavy laden, come and I will give you rest. Take His yoke, for He is